Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It's Monday. I hope you had a good rest because we're about to tell you what's been going on over the weekend and I guess also today. Let's start with our headlines. Today on Before Coffee, nitrogen reduction target proving controversial for farmers at Dutch elections.
And we will cover the war in Sudan.
Scotland could join the EU after independence. This is a report.
And today we talk about the life of Rosalynn Carter, who has passed away at 96.
Shakira reaches a deal with Spanish prosecutors on first day of tax fraud trial.
Those stories and more on today, which is National Absurdity Day, November 20th, 2023 on Before Coffee.
Okay, first story. We talked about the Dutch elections, I think last week, which is where I live. I can't vote for national elections. I can only vote for local elections, so this is out of my hands. Let's find out why farmers are angry at the government. This is from Vincenzo Genovese from Euronews. In a country of less than 18 million people and more than 160 million livestock, agriculture reigns supreme. As this world's second largest exporter of agricultural products, along with half of its land being devoted to agriculture, the Netherlands is widely considered an agri-food superpower despite its tiny size. But this in its own right creates problems, namely nitrogen emissions. In high concentrations, the chemical element is dangerous for both nature and water quality. And in 2019, a pollution crisis led to the Dutch government to set a goal of halving emissions from the gas by 2030. This, of course, set itself on a collision course with Dutch farming establishment, given that almost all human activities produce it, but in the Netherlands, agriculture is the biggest culprit responsible for 50% of all nitrogen. Basically, here in the Netherlands, there are two big reasons why we have a nitrogen problem for the first time. And it's because we are a densely populated area and we have the densest livestock concentration in Europe. Don Bozeman from Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency said in an interview with Euronews. On the other hand, the Netherlands has taken a rather strict interpretation of the European Habitats Directive, which stipulates that for every kind of activity, we have to realize nitrogen reduction elsewhere. Dutch farmers are required to reduce their nitrogen footprint or sell their properties to the Dutch state, which put in place a voluntary buyout scheme with a budget of 8 billion euros. However, the scheme has not been very popular. According to Jan Ardi Korevaar, who owns 115 cows on a 19-hectare property in South Holland and produces 100 million liters of milk per year in almost 100% organic way, the government should focus more on boosting innovation rather than reducing the size of farms. A lot of farmers are worried because it's not clear to them what they need to do on their farms to meet the demands of the government. Korevaar told Euronews, "I think there are also possibilities to reduce emissions for dairy farmers as well, if you can help them with funding to reduce them with technological innovations, but we do not have that type of measure yet." And the other thing would be the government helps to make your farms more extensive, so helping, for instance, with the availability of land. But the issue has turned controversial ahead of the country's elections next week. While farmers are pushing back against the current provisions, some parties and environmental associations want even more. My eyes lost where I was. They're asking for mandatory buyouts instead of voluntary ones, halving emissions by 2030, and stricter targets on livestock reduction. We demand the government helps farmers make the transition to ecological farming with 70% fewer animals in 2030 and 80% fewer in 2050, and actually help farmers or help the market set up a system in such a way that farmers also have a good income producing food for humans instead of a lot of food for animals. Hilda Anna de Vries from Greenpeace Netherlands has said, "I find it really interesting that while this article does cover what farmers think, it doesn't cover at all what happened I think last year or the year before, I can't remember how long ago that was because time flies too fast, when the Dutch farmers started having protests and driving the tractors around and getting shot by police because they were a tractor was driving up to a police and they thought they were gonna get smashed like a freaking pancake. So he shot at the tractor in fear for his life, I guess. That will stop the tractor. I don't know.
Going at blistering 25 miles an hour, I can't get out of the way.
Yeah.
Tractor can't take down a building.
They actually can go pretty fast, but it's very scary when you're on a bike and a tractor passes you on a farm road and you're like, oh God, please don't accidentally swerve off and smash me. But they didn't go in at all about how there might have been a let's say industry plant in the protests, which caused the farmers to get way more riled up than they needed to be, because the company that basically buys most of the agricultural goods from Dutch farms told the farmers, oh my God, you better watch out. They're trying to end your career. They're going to take everything from you. They're going to remove you, not let you farm anymore. We're going to go hungry and starve. And a lot of farmers believed that populist route and even got given flags by the industry plant and said, here, go wave these and say, we're Dutch farmers and we're proud and you can't take our cows away from us, even though nobody was ever planning on doing that. But I guess according to this article, they were planning on buying your farm if you couldn't get up to standard, I guess. Either way, your story.
Oh, okay. All right, in war news, you notice we don't do the wall-to-wall coverage of the Israel-Hamas war. Not because we don't care.
It's because it's not a war.
Because the news media saturated. It's saturated with that coverage as if it's the only thing going on. Did you know there's a war going on in Sudan? Let's cover that, because the news media is completely ignoring it. The major television news media will only cover the one that's the sexiest, apparently. Sexy war. People are into sexy wars. The Guardian, this is an editorial from The Guardian. Apparently it's from the whole staff. I don't know, not one person put their name on it. Sudan's descent from a promise of freedom on the brink of genocide has come at dizzying speed. The revolution that led to the military ousting of dictator Omar al-Bashir in April 2019 was followed by a coup that removed civilian leaders, and then this spring by the outbreak of war between the Sudanese army and paramilitary forces. At a relentless pace, the clash between the army under General Fatah al-Barhan and the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, under Lieutenant General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemedti, has spread across the country. More than 10,000 people are estimated to have been killed so far, and 4.8 million displaced internally, with another 1.2 million fleeing to neighboring countries. The UN humanitarian coordinator for the country, Clementine Nwata Salami, said earlier this month that the violence against civilians is verging on pure evil. Greed for resources and power and long-standing rivalries and hatreds all fuel the fire. More than 1,000 members of the Masalit community are believed to have been killed in Armanta, West Darfur, in early November by the RSF and allied Arab militias. It led to the EU to warn that the world cannot allow a repeat of the genocide of early 2000s, not the 20,000s. Although which of the Janjaweed militia rose, later formalizing into the RSF. New reports of the enslavement of women or men are emerging. What looked for some months like a stalemate in the wider war has morphed into dramatic gains by the RSF over the last few weeks in Darfur and elsewhere in the West, and advances into former army strongholds. U.S., European, and African officials believe the arms shipments from the United Arab Emirates, as well as via the Wagner Group, have been key, although the UAE says it does not equip either side. Egypt's support for the Sudanese army, though less sustained, has also deepened the conflict. Western government should pressure Abu Dhabi and Cairo to pull back. This is an editorial saying this, not me. One prospect that Sudan could effectively become divided into zones, as Libya has been. Another is perhaps even more disturbing rather than splitting, it may splinter, leaving those on the ground even more endangered. The RSF has no experience in governing and apparently has little interest. Some think they are cracks in the coalition under General Burnham. Yet all of this is happening with minimal interest to the attention from the outside world, which is consumed by the wars in Gaza and Ukraine and broader geopolitical rivalries. The difficulties reporting for Sudan have further enabled the neglect. Even the basic task of feeding refugees was not adequately addressed. The UN has warned that food for the 500,000 who have fled the Chad will run out next month without extra funding. Little wonder that they feel abandoned. Officials, as well as analysts, warn of the lack of international engagement and urgency when it comes to finding an exit from this conflict, even if greater leverage were available. Though both sides apparently want to resume narrowly focused talks in Jeddah, hopes for a breakthrough are low. The RSF has no reason to make concessions as it advances. General Burhan denies the need to make them. Amid all of this, the innocent are terrorized, and the aspirations of civilian rule appears to be a receding dream. But the generals have shown they are neither fit to govern Sudan nor capable of doing so. So, that's from The Guardian. It's an opinion piece of there's a war going on. There's just as many people dying in those wars as the other ones, and they're all innocent, just like the other ones. Your story.
Yeah, I mean, there's like also something happening in Congo, but I guess we'll cover that next week because it'll probably still be going on. Because as much as
we can go tomorrow,
as much as news moves on really quickly, it's not like the actual conflicts do. But for now, I'm covering Scotland. That's right, the thing I wrote my bachelor's thesis about may happen. Scotland joining the EU after independence. This is from David McDougall with AFP. A new report from the government in Edinburgh lays out its plans for a future relationship with Europe, but independence is not on the cards anytime soon. The Scottish government has laid out its plans to rejoin the European Union, claiming it would be a process that happens smoothly and quickly after independence, with an application to become part of the bloc being submitted as soon as possible. The pro-EU, pro-independence government in Edinburgh made the comments in a new policy paper that lays out the benefits of EU membership, including access to single market for Scottish businesses, joint access to EU's free trade agreements, securing EU funding for Scottish agriculture in particular, and allowing Scotland's young people to benefit from Erasmus University exchange program, which was closed to them after Brexit. EU membership says the country's de facto foreign minister Angus Robertson would give Scotland direct representation in European decision-making for the first time, providing opportunities for our economy to grow inside a market which is 7 times the size of the UK and escape the damage of the UK's hard Brexit, which is hitting Scotland's economy and communities hard. The elephant in the room for Scotland's EU membership is that independence is not on the cards anytime soon. Both the UK Conservative and Labour parties are vigorously opposed to any mechanism that would allow the Scottish government to hold a referendum on independence, while polls constantly show no major support for independence in Scotland itself. A survey published earlier this month puts for independence at 40%, with 49% in favor of remaining part of the UK. But yet again, as we've constantly say on the show, polls don't mean much because you don't know what questions they asked on the poll, you don't know who they asked, and if they just called landlines, which majority of people do not own landlines these days. The ruling Scottish National Party says it will claim it has a mandate for independence negotiations with London if it wins a majority of Scottish seats in the next UK election, something it already has now. However, a series of scandals and the natural attrition of almost 16 years in power has dented the SNP's once unassailable position at the top of Scotland's political establishment, with a seat change expected in the next year. A seat change, I think, but they typoed, so it's a seat change. Scottish Labour was widely predicted to capture a large number of SNP's Westminster seats at the next UK election, with polls also showing a surge of support for Labour in Scottish parliamentary elections, which would likely cancel out the Edinburgh's Parliament pro-independence majority. At the start of November, the European Commission issued an annual report on the future enlargement of the bloc, with expansions plans firmly focused on the Western Balkans region. Yet again, more polls saying this is what's going to happen, not this is what might happen. People just take polls as fact. Scotland left the EU with the rest of the UK after the Brexit referendum in 2016, not by choice. Although the UK had as a whole narrowly voted to leave by like 2%, Scotland overwhelmingly voted to remain part of the bloc, and polls since have shown that the increasing majority think Brexit was a mistake and that the country's future should be in the EU. It paints a picture of confused Scottish electorate. They want to be part of the European Union, but are not committed to independence as a way to get there. Since the Brexit referendum, there has been much debate about the best future for Scotland, said Robertson. The Scottish government believes we can build a better country through a powerful combination of independence and EU membership, he added. The Scottish government said an independent Scotland would pursue the normal accession process, known as Article 49, which typically takes several years. In the meantime, they would seek some of the sort of transitional arrangement that would allow Scottish exporters access to the single market in particular. Having been part of the EU for 47 years, with a positive record of implementation of EU legislation and a high level of alignment with EU laws, put Scotland in a unique position to move quickly through the accession process, the report says. The new policy paper fudges the issues of whether an independent Scotland would adopt the euro as its currency, an issue that has proved particularly divisive in political discussions in Scotland. However, the paper restates that the government's position that there would be a new Scottish pound currency is in use after independence, and then later date decisions might take on joining the euro. Scotland would likely eventually become a net contributor to EU budgets, the government says, but notes a number of member states with relatively small economies have initially been net recipients, but over time have become net contributors to the EU budget. While Scotland would benefit in a huge range of areas by rejoining the European Union, the new policy paper highlights how the EU could also benefit from having Scotland as a new member state. It highlights areas such as research and development on renewable technology to fight climate change, culture and education, a commitment to EU social justice agenda, and commitment to freedom and democracy. Attractive qualities for a bloc struggling to figure out how to handle countries such as Hungary and Poland, or others which lean right and have moved far away from shared EU values. We are also well placed to give back to the EU as a welcoming and inclusive country with strengths in research and renewables, and a steadfast commitment to advancing human rights and rule of international law, says Angus Robertson. And I think another good reason why they want to join the EU, which is not mentioned here, is that there's actually a dwindling population of people in Scotland, and there's actually a English upsurge of people, mostly holiday houses, not people who live in Scotland, but people who buy property in Scotland, go there every summer, and then go back to London or something. And there's a huge amount of that happening in Scotland, which means that they're losing actual working, like economic contributors in Scotland, and they would like EU people to come and move over, and it's way harder to move over to Scotland when you're not part of the bloc. So I think they also want some immigration. That's my own take on that as somebody who studied Scotland, but your story.
Wait. In Rosalynn Carter, former First Lady. This is AP News story. It's not according to, it's a fact. Former First Lady Rosalynn Carter, closest advisor to Jimmy Carter during the one term as U.S. President and their 4 decades together as global humanitarians, has died at the age of 96. The Carter Center said she died Sunday after living with dementia and suffering many months of declining health. The statement said she died peacefully with her family by her side at 2 p.m. at her rural Georgia home of Plains. Rosalynn was my equal partner in everything I ever accomplished, the former president said in a statement. She gave me wise guidance, encouragement when I needed it. As long as Rosalynn was in the world, I always knew somebody loved and supported me. President Joe Biden called the Carters an incredible family because they brought so much grace to the office. He had this great integrity, she still does, and she did too, Biden told reporters as he was boarding Air Force One Sunday night at an event in Norfolk, Virginia. God bless them, Joe Biden said. He spoke to the family and was told that Jimmy Carter was surrounded by his grandchildren and children. Later, the White House released a joint statement for the president. First Lady Jill Biden said Carter was inspired the nation. She was a champion for equal rights and opportunities for women and girls, an advocate for mental health and wellness for every person, and a supporter of the unseen and uncompensated caregivers of our children, aged loved ones, people with disabilities, the statement said. The Carters were married for more than 77 years, forging what they both described as a full partnership. Unlike many previous First Ladies, Rosalynn sat in cabinet meetings, spoke out on controversial issues, and represented her husband on foreign trips. Aides to President Carter sometimes referred to her privately as the co-president. Rosalynn is my best friend, the perfect extension from me, probably the most influential person in my life, Jimmy Carter told aides during the White House years, which spanned from 1977 to 1981. The former president, now 99, remains at the couple's home in Plains after entering hospice care himself in February. Fiercely loyal and compassionate, as well as politically astute, Rosalynn Carter prided herself on being activist First Lady, and no one doubted her behind-the-scenes influence. When her role in highly publicized cabinet shakeup became known, she was forced to declare publicly, "I am not running the government." Many presidential aides insisted that her political instincts were better than her husband's. They often enlisted her support for a project they discussed it with, before they discussed it with the president. Her iron will, contrasted with her outwardly shy demeanor and her soft Southern accent, inspired Washington reporters to call her the Steel Magnolia. Both Carters said in later years that Rosalynn had always been more political of the two. After Jimmy Carter's landslide defeat in 1980, it was she, not the former president, who contemplated the implausible comeback, and years later she confessed to missing their life in Washington. Jimmy Carter trusted her so much that in 1977, only months into his term, he sent her on a mission to Latin America to tell dictators he meant what he said about denying military aid and other support to violators of human rights. She also had strong feelings about the style of the Carter White House. The Carters did not serve hard liquor at public functions, but Rosalynn did permit U.S. wine. There were fewer evenings of ballroom dancing and more square dancing and picnics. Throughout her husband's political career, she chose mental health and problems of the elderly as her signature policy emphasis. When the news media didn't cover those efforts as much as she believed was warranted, she criticized reporters for writing only about sexy subjects. And she's right. As honorary chairwoman of the President's Commission on Mental Health, she once testified before a Senate subcommittee, becoming the first lady since Eleanor Roosevelt to address a congressional panel. She was back in Washington in 2007 to push Congress for improved mental health coverage, saying, "We've been working on this so long, it finally seems to be within reach." She said she developed her interest in mental health during her husband's campaign for Georgia governor. "I used to come home and say to Jimmy, 'Why are people telling me their problems?' And he said, 'Because you may be the only person who'll ever see you may be close enough to someone who can help them," she explained. After Reagan won the 1980 election, Rosalynn Carter seemed more visibly devastated than her husband. She initially had little interest in returning to the small town of Plains, where they both were born, married, and spent most of their lives. "I was hesitant, not at all sure that I could be happy here after the dazzle of the White House and the years of stimulating political battles," she wrote in 1984 autobiography. First lady from Plains. But we slowly rediscovered the satisfaction of life we had left long before. After leaving Washington, Jimmy and Rosalynn co-founded the Carter Center in Atlanta to continue their work. She chaired the Carter's annual symposium on mental health issues and raised funds to efforts to aid the mentally ill and homeless. She also wrote Helping Yourself to Help Others about the challenging and caring for elderly, ailing relatives, and a sequel, Helping Someone with Mental Illness. Frequently, the Carters left home on humanitarian missions, building houses with a Habitat for Humanity, and promoting public health and democracy across a developing world. I get tired, she said in her travels, but something so wonderful always happens. To go to a village where they have guinea worm and go back a year or two later where there's no guinea worm, I mean the people dance and sing. It's so wonderful. In 2015, Jimmy Carter's doctors discovered small tumors on his brain. The Carters feared he had weeks to live. He was treated with a drug to boost his immune system and later announced that the doctors found no remaining signs of cancers. But when they first received the news, she said she didn't know what was going to do. I depend on him when I have questions, when I'm writing speeches, anything. I consult with him. Eleanor Rosalynn Smith was born in Plains on August 18, 1927, eldest of 4 children. Her father died when she was young, so she took on much of the responsibility of caring for her siblings when her mother went to work part-time. She also contributed to the family income by working after school at a beauty parlor. Were very poor, worked hard, and she once said, but she kept her studies, graduating from high school as class valedictorian. She soon fell in love with her brother of one of her best friends. Jimmy and Rosalynn had known each other all their lives. It was Jimmy's mother. They literally knew each other their entire lives. Jimmy's mother delivered Rosalynn. She was a midwife and delivered her as a baby. And so 3-year-old Jimmy met Rosalynn when she was in the cradle. So there's your story. Rosalynn Carter has passed away. There's more, but I can't go on forever.
The world yet again loses a good person.
But she got
hopefully
96.
somebody will take up her mantle and also do some good, right? Inspiration. Okay. Let me go. Where was I? Here we go. Let's go into our culture news. While people in the government are caring about others, Shakira is doing tax fraud. That's right.
Oh no.
This is from Euronews with AP. Now, I believe we reported on her getting, I guess, arrested or whatever. The Spanish government saying, hey, you owe us money. But now this is the actual first day of the trial, and I think she's already reached a settlement. Under the new deal, Shakira received a suspended 3-year sentence and a fine of 7 million euros. Global pop star Shakira has been summoned today to a Barcelona courthouse to attend first day of her trial for allegedly defrauding Spanish tax officials of millions of euros, and it was over in just 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Wow. Shakira agreed to a deal with Spanish authorities on the first day, avoiding the risk of prison sentence. She told the presiding magistrate, Jose de Amo, that she accepted agreement and she reached with prosecutors. She answered yes to confirm her acknowledgement of 6 counts of failing to pay the Spanish government $14.5 million in taxes between 2012 and 2014. Yeah, when you make a lot of money like Shakira, those taxes can really add up if you don't pay them for 2 years. Under the deal, Shakira is to receive a suspended 3-year sentence and a fine of $7 million. The trial, which would have included more than 100 witnesses over the following weeks, was instead called off after just 8 minutes. Prosecutors said in July that they would seek a prison sentence of 8 years and 2 months and a fine of $24 million for the singer, who has won over fans worldwide for hits in Spanish and English in different musical genres. The case hinges on where Shakira, now 46, lived during that period. Prosecutors in Barcelona have alleged that the Colombian singer spent more than half of that period in Spain, and therefore should be paid taxes on her worldwide income in a country even though her official residence was still in the Bahamas. Tax rates are much lower in the Bahamas than in Spain. Man, if this gets passed, that means if you go on vacation somewhere, oh no, I went on vacation somewhere. Oh, sorry. That counts as you have to pay taxes now because you're on vacation in friggin' Italy for 6 months.
There is no way to enforce that. Anyway.
Of course, that's why it's ridiculous. Shakira's public relations firm said she had already paid all that she owed and an additional $3 million in interest. The multiple Grammy and Latin Grammy winner waved a blew a kiss to a small crowd of bystanders before entering the courthouse. Her lawyer, which she probably pays billions to, was like, "We got this," and she's like, "I trust you. You're a lawyer." So why is she worried about anything? It's not her job to be worried. Shakira turned down a deal offered to her by prosecutors to settle her case in July 2022, saying via her Spanish public relations firm, Leonet y Sunsa, that she believes in her innocence and chooses to leave the issue at hand of the law. The details of that potential deal were not made public. Shakira was named in Paradise Papers, leaks that detailed the offshore tax arrangements of numerous high-profile individuals, including musical celebrities such as Madonna and Bono. The defense team for Shakira, the Barcelona firm Molins Defensa Penal, said in November 2022 that she had not spent more than 60 days a year inside the country during the period in question, adding she would have needed to spend half a year in Spain to be considered a fiscal resident. Her defense argued that she was away from Barcelona for long stretches on a world tour in 2011, and then spent a lot of time in the United States as part of a jury for the NBC television musical talent show The Voice. Spanish prosecutors disagreed, and the investigation judge, Marco Ubrieras, wrote in 2021 on the conclusion of the 3-year probe into the charges that he found there existed sufficient evidence of criminality for the case to go to trial. Shakira defended her innocence when she was questioned by Ubrieras in 2019. She lost an appeal to have the case thrown out last year. Shakira established her fiscal residency in Spain in 2014. At the same time, her oldest child was enrolled in a school in Barcelona. Ah, so they're using school enrollment as a reason why. Well, obviously you're a resident here. You sent your kids to school here. We should get some of your tax money to help fund public schools. God damn it! If you're gonna send your kids to school, according to her defense team, as she was going to spend more time in the country with her family. In Spain, an investigative judge carries out an initial probe and decides either to throw the case out or send it to trial. A court can waive prison time for the first-time offenders if they are sentenced to less than 2 years behind bars. In a separate investigation, Spanish state prosecutor charged Shakira in September with alleged evasion of $6.7 million in tax on her 2018 income. They accused her of using an offshore company based in a tax haven to avoid paying the tax. Spain has cracked down on soccer stars such as Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo over the past decades for not paying their full taxes. The former Barcelona and Real Madrid stars were found guilty of evasion, but both avoided prison time after the sentences were suspended. Let's be honest, Shakira is pretty famous. Don't see her hanging out in prison, okay? I don't see that happening. She'll get away with not going to prison, because honestly, that's the only real punishment she can deal with is going to prison for tax evasion, because a monetary punishment really doesn't mean anything to a global superstar, I think. So she will hire all the lawyers possible to try to get out of actually paying for consequences, whether or not she deserves them or not. Because like I said, sounds to me like they just want her money for public schools or something. But I do have to say, her sending your child to school in Barcelona is suspiciously like, are you sure you didn't live here? If you live somewhere, you send your child to school there. That's my argument. So I can see where they're coming from with that.
I don't see her side at all, because you could always live in Luxembourg or Switzerland. So you just live in Spain. So pay taxes. That's the way it works. Tough. The old term tough titty applies here, I suppose. Not to get vulgar. I'm sorry.
No, that's it. End of the story.
That was it. Yeah. Commentary, I was like, yeah. Live in Spain, pay their taxes. That's the way it works. There's always Luxembourg. There's always Switzerland. There's always the Bahamas, as you mentioned, right?
Her
Hey,
family doesn't live in those countries, though, so that's why she was even
they
here, right?
wanted them to go to Spain and go to school in Spain and not have to pay taxes.
Yeah,
And they,
ridiculous.
100 witnesses? I love Shakira, but Jesus Christ, pay your taxes. 1761, this day, Pope Pius VIII was born. They had at least 8 of them. He was Pope from 1829 to 1830. One whole year. Well, he's worth bringing up. He probably did nothing. 1815, in this day, in the final phases of the Napoleonic Wars, Britain, Russia, Austria, and Prussia renewed the Quadruple Alliance to prevent further French aggression. 1820, the American warship Essex was rammed by a sperm whale, later sank, inspiring the climatic scene in Herman Melville's Moby Dick in 1851. In 1910, Russian author Leo Tolstoy, suffering from pneumonia, died of heart failure in a railroad station of Ostapolvo. Don't they have hospitals in Russia? In 1917, for the first time, tanks were used effectively in warfare by the British at the Battle of Cambrai. It's a weird-looking tank. It legitimately just looks like a tank. That's, I guess, is where they get the name from. It's a tank of tanks that hold something with a track on it. On this day, 1925, American politician Robert F. Kennedy was born. 1947, the future Queen Elizabeth II married Philip Mountbatten, Prince Philip, at Westminster Abbey. Native American activists began occupation of Alcatraz Island on this day in 1969, protesting what they saw as use of government's ongoing economic, social, and political neglect of Native Americans. They were forced off the island in June of 1971. Of course, the neglect of Native Americans immediately stopped.
It was all fixed after then.
Next day, they put a stop to that. 1975, Generalissimo Francisco Franco, leading over Spain, died, and he's still dead. Generalissimo Francisco Franco died in this day in 1975 at the age of 82, giving birth to Saturday Night Live's first running gag. Generalissimo Francisco Franco is still dead. 1992, massive fire erupted at Windsor Castle in Berkshire, England. Is that where they were married? Was it Windsor Castle? Or was it the other ones? I wasn't even paying attention to the story I read. Nope, they were married at Westminster Abbey. But there was a fire at Windsor Castle on this day in 1992, causing the destruction of 150 rooms, though the priceless art collection was largely untouched. The art they probably looted from other countries. American tobacco companies signed an agreement in 1998 with 46 U.S. states to settle the states' claims for reimbursement and Medicaid funds they had expended to treat smoking-related illnesses. The settlement costing tobacco manufacturers $206 billion, beyond the $40 billion they had agreed to pay in 1997. Wow. Got back off. American filmmaker Robert Altman died in this day in 2006 at the age of 81. In 2015, American civil rights analyst Jonathan J. Pollard was released from prison, having served 30 years for selling classified information to Israel. Our featured event. In 1910, Mexico Revolution launched by Francisco Madero. On this day in 1910, Francisco Madero launched a failed revolt that nonetheless sparked the Mexican Revolution by inspiring hope in such leaders as Pancho Villa and Emiliano Zapata, who then mobilized their Reagan armies. Oh, the Reagan armies, they're not necessarily the best, I guess. I like how they say Reagan. We're all Reagan here. Every one of us. And our feature biography is Selma Lagerlöf, Swedish author, born on November 20th, 1958, died in March 1858. And died March 16th, 1948, at age 81 in Sweden. Other birthdays. Robert Byrd, U.S. Senator, born in 1917. Benoit Malebranche, Polish born French mathematician, was born in 1924. Joe Biden, President of the United States, was born in 1942, so it's his 81st birthday today. And Good Luck Jonathan, who is the President of Nigeria. That's right, his name is Good Luck Jonathan. Well, good luck, Jonathan, and happy birthday. And good luck, and happy birthday. And happy birthday, good luck. Good luck, happy birthday, and happy birthday, good luck. And November 20th is also National Child's Day. So everybody is either has a child or was a child. National Peanut Butter Fudge Day. Wow. Whew. That sounds good. And National Absurdity Day. And also it's World Children's Day. Not just national, but World's Children's Day. So it's National Child's Day, but also World's Children's Day, which is kind of the same thing. That's it.
This has been Allison here from the Netherlands, where we are totally voting for our next prime minister. Not me, everyone else. I'm not allowed to.
Oh.
And
right.
I'm sure it will go fine and nothing will change because, let's be honest, the Dutch government has too many parties that they all just argue with, hey, I don't want to do that, and then nothing happens. And
well, that's it. This is Roger in the United States, National Absurd Day. Being absurd as usual, and before coffee.
And this is your mic drop moment.
Just numbers guy. It's insurmountable. Let's be honest. It is insurmountable to overtake
I'm a
Donald Trump
character guy.
by any of these people, unless, of course, something dramatic happens with Trump in his personal life, being convicted of something
and
or
nothing,
worse.
But nothing dramatic could possibly happen in Donald Trump's life. I'm not a numbers guy, by the way, Eric. I'm a character guy. And I think we deserve better as the Republican Party and as the United States than a guy who's going to be convicted of felonies this April to be our nominee and to try to be our president.
By a bunch of liberal Democrats that are trying to take him down because they fear him.
No.
Guess what? If Chris Christie was
not
53%,
by a bunch of liberal Democrats.
They probably have your butt in the courtroom too.
No, I'm not going to put up with you saying that. He's going to be convicted by Mark Meadows, a founder of the Freedom Caucus, and his chief of staff, who he called the next James Baker. That guy is now testifying and will sit 20 feet away from Donald Trump in a courtroom, taking an oath and saying he committed crimes and he directed others to commit crimes, including me.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.